There is a public health crisis in the Western world. We're getting fatter and sicker. And that's despite all the medical achievements over the last 100 years. Now, there are many reasons for this, but I think we can boil it down to some of the changes that we have in our diet and our exposure to environmental toxins. Of course, behavioral, all these things factor in. But one of the big ones, in my opinion, is plastic consumption. Now, we first of all consume a lot of microplastics and nanoplastics from the foods that we're eating. They might be in the food already. They might be in the packaging of the food. So it's something that we actually eat with the food we're consuming. But also we're consuming plastic chemicals. And I think that might actually be the bigger component here, especially when plastic is heated. And this happens all the time. For example, if you go to the coffee shop and you order a coffee or tea, a hot beverage in a paper cup. Now, that paper cup is lined with plastic. There's a plastic liner, and that's actually what's in contact with the hot liquid that you're consuming. And when you expose these plastics to heat, a lot of these chemicals, these phthalates, bisphenols, and so on, leach into the liquid. And it's a massive amount, unfortunately. Now, the hotter your beverage, the worse this actually is. And this is something we do on a daily basis without even thinking about it. Then we heat up food in the microwave. And if it's in a plastic container, which is easy for storage, we can take it with us, not going to break, it's light, that's fantastic, you can easily clean it. The problem is each time you heat that, and I don't care how long that's been around, it will continue to leach in those chemicals into your food. So when we heat things in plastic, this is the worst thing you can possibly do. And one of the easy things to cut that out is not to use these paper cups, not to use plastic cups, not to use styrofoam, of course. Instead, ceramic, stainless steel, glass are all fine. These are all good options, also easy to clean, a little bit heavier, a little bit more cumbersome, but that's a huge step to help you avoid these chemicals that you're consuming on a daily basis. When we're buying food in the supermarket, most of it will be packaged in plastic. Now, if it's cold temperatures, as a meat that's packaged in plastic is generally okay. It's not great. It's still in contact with it. There might be some of the plastics coming in there, but it's cold. At cold temperatures, there's much less of this happening actually, right? So that's probably fine. Canned foods is a big problem. Now, the cans that you buy, they are lined with plastic as well. There's a plastic liner, and that's important. You don't want to get botulism, right? So the plastic liner is helpful, but a lot of times the food, as it's put into the can, is hot. So when they actually can the food, it's usually done under hot temperatures. And so you got a lot of that plastic sitting in there, even though the can, when you buy it, is of course room temperature or cold. You're thinking that's pretty inert, but no, by the time it was produced, you have a lot of that stuff in there already. That's in your food and you're consuming it, right? And what's the issue with these plastic chemicals? Why is it such a big deal? Well, they're hormone disruptors for one. They're carcinogenic, means they're predisposing you more for cancer. And, with the amounts we're taking in, which is actually very difficult to determine on a per person basis, how much you get in every year on this, right? But this can do massive damage. And in terms of hormones, we know already one of the things I mentioned earlier on, chronically sick and fat, for men especially, is low testosterone. Low testosterone can certainly contribute to increased adipose tissue. So it makes us fatter, weaker, and also, again, will change our hormones. We have higher estrogen levels, lower testosterone levels. And that's actually not a very good thing for men, right? But for women as well, plastic chemicals can also block hormones in women, especially it's very problematic in young people, young men and women, especially during puberty, right? And if these chemicals are blocked, we have some issues there. And sometimes you have early puberty, sometimes you have other hormonal issues there. And that is really a massive problem in the development. Also, and most importantly, in my opinion, is during pregnancy, because during pregnancy is when actually the baby is forming. And if we don't have the right hormones at the right time and they're disrupted from plastic chemicals, then we can get some issues there as well. But for example, the genitalia are not formed appropriately. So there's some issues there that we see. So it's very important, especially if you're pregnant, avoid all plastics by any means, especially anything heated in plastics. Again, use glass, ceramic, and stainless steel. That's much better or significantly better, and avoid any food that has high plastic contents, for example, hot dogs. So here you have actually plastic particles in the meat because it's just junk. They gobble together. There might be some packaging that gets in there and just gets ground up and it's in there, right? So that's one that will certainly have a bigger amount of microplastics and nanoplastics. They've done some estimates that all of us have at minimum a credit card's worth of plastic in our body at any given time. It goes to your brain, it goes everywhere. And that's a change. So when we look back about 100 years ago, we didn't have that much plastic. Things were packaged in glass and stainless steel. There were different methods of packaging. We had a lot less plastic exposure at that point, right? I'm not saying plastic is the only culprit. Of course, there's certain dietary things that I don't like as well. I'm talking in other videos about this, from food colorings to seed oils, etc. So these are all things that are pretty bad for us. But the plastic is one we can actively avoid. I think that's something that is very important to understand. Again, if it's heated, especially, it is extremely bad. And if you can cut those out and you can replace them with your glass, stainless steel, or ceramic, then you're already good to go with that. And it makes a huge difference in your hormones and in your overall health.